have that radio station out in Tom Sawyer Park?
I hope so, but I don't know if we'll get out that far.
Well, you got to make it an internet radio station.
Yeah, we are doing that.
Very good. Okay, great. So in our meetings, we would then have time for some folks to share out around the room. And this really gives us an opportunity to learn from each other and, again, to be accountable to one another. And we're not going to take the time to do share outs today. But we will move along because we actually realize that we don't have that much time left to actually talk, and we'll leave some time for comments and questions from everybody.
So we started this out saying that we really want to honor the experience in this room of people who are committed to social justice work. And part of how we see our work is that we don't have all the answers. And that we're going to be learning about how to do this work for the rest of our lives. And that we have in fact found that one of the things that holds us back, and we'll speak for ourselves, but we found that it is commonly shared, especially among those of us who are white, is the idea that we can't do this work until we're perfect. We can't do this work until we know it all, until we know that we won't make a mistake. And do you know what people of color have said to that? Get over yourself. You're going to make mistakes. We want you here. We need you here. You're going to be always learning, and you'll hear about it when you mess up. But know that do not wait until you're perfect, which has been very helpful for us. We're both perfectionists and what do you call the other, not enoughness and all of that kind of thing. The other thing that we get stuck is, and this was very interesting after the first meeting before we started SURJ, is permission seeking. What does that mean? That means, well, I can't speak out against that racism unless a person of color tells me it's okay. People of color said to us, whoa, wait a minute, you know racism's wrong. Why aren't you talking to other white people about it? You know, but we want that permission, right? We need, if we believe and we're anti-racist, we need to show up. Imperfectly, show up. That was something that was holding us back. The other thing we found held us back is that a lot of times in our groups, we get very bogged down in the idea that the racial justice work is about diversifying our group. Has anyone been part of those discussions? How can we get more in our group? So a couple of things. I usually now say to folks, don't start with that question. Don't start with that question. Somebody at the conference I was just at, Facing Race, which I would encourage people to go, 1,500 people, the biggest discussion on on race and multiracial, multi-generational. And one person said, you know, we can't get to racial justice through diversity. We can't get to it just by getting to know each other. And then she added, she said, and I can't get there dating my way to justice. And she said she had tried. Okay? So part of that discussion around diversity is actually really well-intentioned. We mean well when we have that discussion about diversity. But part of it is we need to learn that there are struggles going on in this community, led by people of color, that we need to go to and say, Ferguson's happening. I mean, yesterday, one of the things I did was I called a black activist in this community and said, what's the plan when the Ferguson verdict comes down? I do not have to go off in a corner with Carol and say, let's plan the Ferguson response, because I know there are people that are working on that and that I can come and stand with them. The thing we want people to do is bring someone else with you. That's the white organizing piece, right? Is not for Carla just to show up over and over again, as important that is for me to show up, but to reach out to somebody else, reach out to another white person and bring them with you. That's the thing about expanding the base. The other thing that we encourage, and it's when something happens in this community, and it happens all the time, when Ferguson happened, where are people gathering? Find out what's happening and join with we both believe very deeply, and I know a lot of people in this room do because you show up all the time, is that we have to put our bodies where our hearts and our thoughts are. That we actually have to go stand with each other. It means being down at City Hall. It means that after the verdict comes down, the day after the verdict comes down, 5 o'clock, right?
That's right.
Down at 7th and Jefferson in front of the Louisville Police Department, okay? So important to be there. When white people aren't there, what does most of the white community? We model for them by not showing up. Oh, well, I guess I don't need to be there. I don't see any other white people being there. Bob Cunningham said to me once, he said, you know what I really want SURJ to do? Is make up some signs against racism, and a bunch of you white folks march down 4th Street. Just be visible. I'm against racism. But you know, the point of that is that not enough of us who are white are visible. And so, because Bob said, I want you to be not really a model, but I want other white people to see that that's what white people do, is you show up when this stuff happens. The police abuse cases that the Kentucky Alliance is working on, again, we mentioned the minimum wage, the immigration issue, absolutely, to understand that, you know, does everybody here know the Pastor Niemöller quote, first they came for the communists and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a communist? We could make that, first they came for the young black men and I didn't stand up because I wasn't. Then they came for the undocumented and I didn't stand up because I wasn't. Then they came for the union organizer and I didn't stand up because I wasn't. Then they came for the WikiLeaks people and I didn't step up because I wasn't. You know, every time when we see these struggles, if we can put our bodies there. But the other piece that's really important is sometimes in the progressive movement, we have made a decision that talking about race in our work is divisive. That has been deadly for those movements and efforts that have not talked about race. The other side is talking about race, but they use code words: welfare, low-income housing, unwed mothers, right? People who cross the border, terrorists. Okay, they're using it. We need to be talking about it. So whether we're working on global environmental issues, peace, housing, healthcare, talk about what does race have to do with it. We have to be talking about it because race has everything to do with keeping things the way they are.
All right. Well, we do want to just give a couple of opportunities for involvement. Carla actually already mentioned the Ferguson response when the grand jury decision comes down 5 o'clock the day after. So we'd just be watching the news for that at the police station.
No matter what the decision is?
No matter what the decision is. That's correct. Because again, solidarity with the response either way. Our next Louisville Showing Up for Racial Justice meeting is at the Fairness Campaign office on Frankfort Avenue next Tuesday evening. Traditionally, we have done on pre-Thanksgiving, because everybody's going to be with their families of origin in many cases. Many people are going to be. And there oftentimes are conversations that come up that we don't know how to respond to, and we're trying to get a little practice in for that. We've focused on that in the past, but this time we decided we really wanted to look at what some of the indigenous community resistance around, particularly around the Keystone Pipeline, and some of the environmental justice issues that are happening nationally, and then how that trickles down. You know, we share the same air and the same water and the same land ultimately, and that if people of color, in this case, indigenous peoples, are being impacted by environmental issues, it's bad for all of us, and we also want to stand in solidarity. So that's 6:30 next Tuesday, and we'd love to have some of you join us there. And then the This is an advance. I think there will be information in the forsooth, and there will be more information coming. But mark your calendars for March 11th through 14th of 2015. A national conference called the White Privilege Conference is going to be in Louisville, Kentucky. And it's a really good opportunity right here to be able to go and participate in some of that. And it has, how long has it been going on?
This will be the 16th, and this is the second time it will be held in the South. There will be a tremendous lineup of speakers and workshops, and the theme of it is about resistance, the South leading the way, and so really lifting up those struggles over the decades in the South. You know, sometimes people only think of the South as, oh yeah, that's all the racism and the oppression. But the South has been, has a tremendous legacy of struggle against oppression, and we want to lift that up. And for anyone connected with young people, there is a whole track that's just for high school and college students in terms of getting young people engaged in social justice. And if there are folks here who would like to volunteer and help out, we would very much welcome that. There's a planning group that's been meeting, and if other people would like to work on this conference, that would be wonderful. So I think with that, do we have time for a couple comments, or do we have to close? Do we have?
People should feel free to get back to work, but I think we can spend a couple of, a little bit of time with some questions.
Well, thank you all for being here and for listening, and really appreciate being together. Question over here.
I just wanted to suggest one.
People here, we're going to take a couple of comments.
The women's issues ought to be included in this discussion, absolutely, because of salaries and because of the uses of their bodies. They need to be able to control their own bodies, and solidarity needs to be shown with some feminist issues.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for mentioning that. One of the keynote speakers at the White Privilege Conference is Loretta Ross. She is the head of a group called Sister Song, and that is a whole group of women of color-led organization, which has really been the leadership over the decades around women's health issues and reproductive health issues, and she is just tremendous if you have not heard her, so thank you for mentioning that.
And actually the local Kentucky Reproductive Health Justice Network, those folks have been involved with her work and presented at one of the SURJ meetings, and as part of the action brought up the issue around Marissa Alexander, who's the woman in Florida who stood her ground, African-American woman, stood her ground in protecting herself against an abuser, and ended up getting a 20-year sentence. And so I believe there is movement on that in terms of what's coming up. But again, crossing those different lines and looking at reproductive justice as a much broader issue. And over here. And then.
I do a lot of reading of the Bible. Excuse me if somebody's anti-Christian or whatever. But can I associate racism with the word pride? Is that something different? Can I associate racism? Does it mean pride in a person to be racist?
Well, I mean, I think certainly the attitude of racism could be seen as prideful, that idea that somebody is better than somebody else. Is that, yeah. So, I mean, and I think that another thing in terms of SURJ, and I really appreciate you bringing this up, is that there is absolutely space in this work for people who come from faith traditions. I just speaking for myself again, I used to be like, oh yeah, religion, oh, there's no place for that, there's no place for spirituality. In my life today, I feel that the people I have learned from, who have come from a place of faith to this justice work, have been some of my greatest teachers. And I think we absolutely, that needs to be a part of the conversation. Thank you.
I use a microphone, I have such a sorry voice. A follow-up to what you had just said about women. The other night, maybe some of you were there and heard Gloria Steinem, anybody remember her? Interview opera singer Jesse Norman, and what a dynamic pair they were. Just before they were introduced, and it was a sold-out crowd at KCA in the Baumhart. And the announcement was made before they began that our mayor, Greg Fisher, had that day signed a proclamation of no discrimination against women in our city. And everybody loved that, and we are one of 100 cities worldwide, I assume, that we've joined that club.
Back there? No, behind you. Yes.
Okay. I remember Michelle Alexander speaking. She's the one who wrote the book called The New Jim Crow. And one of the things that she mentioned is that nationwide, blacks and whites do, let's say, smoke pot and sell pot in proportion to their numbers. But you'll see, let's say, 4 blacks get arrested for every white person. And in Kentucky, it's 6 to 1. Now, 58% of Americans, and in Kentucky, want to see marijuana legal. 85% want to see medical marijuana legal, and yet we can't get this passed in Kentucky. What I see is this: if a person is against legalizing medical marijuana, I see that person as a racist. And I think we should confront them on their racism, especially the fact that they hate sick people. And Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter. And basically to get this drug war over with, and we can use the money from the drug war to help the problems of the cities. Thank you.
Yeah, just to underline, 1 in 9 black children has a parent in prison. Only 1 in 57 white children have a parent in prison. And the drug laws, as many people in this room I'm sure know, have contributed tremendously to the disproportionate arresting and imprisoning of people of color, poor people. But it's actually people of color now make not just a disproportionate, or not just disproportionately impacted, but actually may have a numerical majority in terms of who's in prison. 2 more I'm taking here, and then I saw Ira. Go ahead.
Okay, so much talk about prison and jails. Just in case you have that call that you want to work with people in jails and prisons, or you will see this, come see me, because that's what I do. So we go into jails and prisons and have a 4-day seminar to help people get back to who they really are. And of course, there's more. You'll see the racial disparity there. So if you're called to do that, come see me. Dead bullet.
And a really great place to show up will be in the legislature in January. 1 in 4 black men in Kentucky is disenfranchised after doing their time. This impacts people of color and working class white people and poor white people. An outrage. We're only one of the few states that still does not let people vote after they have done their prison time. And we need folks standing with, because those legislators can just discount us if we don't come in enough numbers. Ira?
I'm glad that the mayor has taken a good stand on women. He also needs to take a good stand on African Americans, particularly the workers at the Metropolitan Sewer District. This is an objectively racist situation, which also leads me to what Carol was saying about the bakery, confectionery, and tobacco workers. I was part of the BCTW union, and I was a shop steward there for 21 years, and I sat on the Central Labor. Where did your father work?
Pillsbury.
Pillsbury, okay. I worked at Philip Morris. That union also personifies another problem, not just the problem of racism, but a problem of anti-communism. There was a union called the Food, Tobacco, and Allied Workers Union, which organized strikes in the 1920s and 30s in North Carolina, etc. They were thrown out of the AFL CIO in the CIO in the late 1940s when the McCarthy period came in. They were replaced by an old AFL racist union. They got married to the Bakery Workers Union, which was a progressive union. Unfortunately, it was a forced marriage, like my analogy is forced. And they were racist. Black people could not eat in the cafeteria at 18th and Broadway until 1955. Black people could not work in the main factory. They had to work in the STEM rig in Shirewood because of that. So the last point I want to make is that there are good attempts, the work that you all are doing, good and bad difficulties that we have. At Bellarmine, there was a meeting about Pete Seeger, a big performance, and none of the students who I teach there, not one knew who he was. So we have not done our work. And the last point I want to say is that, and this is a criticism of all of us and me, I've been coming to these wonderful functions for years and years, and we say that we're against racism, then why are we all white year after year, or almost all white, year after year after year? Where is the discussion about how we will change that? Is it that whites are for peace and blacks are for justice? How do we do this? This is a self-criticism as well as a criticism. These things have to be discussed, that I don't self be true.
Okay.
Oh, we would love that. Yeah, we'll
We're organizers.
Yeah, let's pass this around. If you want to be on the SURJ, that's wonderful. We would love to see you.
Name
Right.
and email address would be great. Okay, thank you all very much.
Just one more question.
Oh,
Do you want to ask one more question?
Okay, you're in charge.
Yeah, what do you see as the role of humor and creativity? I'm thinking of a recent YouTube video that my daughter out in Albuquerque sent to me about a neo-Nazi parade in Germany, and the people of the town used that as a way to do fundraising for a self-help group to get people to stop being neo-Nazis. The role of creativity and street humor as opposed to simply holding up a picket sign.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's amazing. I do think it brings attention. It brings folks that maybe otherwise wouldn't be involved. Art and humor has always been, I think, a part of our movements and needs to remain. The young people who are out there in the streets are constantly using art and humor. They're great groups. I can't remember. Jan, you would know it. The group that the billionaires, what is it? The billionaires for justice or whatever. I don't know. But these folks that go out in the streets and dress up as billionaires and have protested Bush, I think is when it first came out. And that was an amazing group as well. So yes, absolutely. Good point. Thanks again. Oh, we just passed out a couple of items that we've used in meetings. The Racial Justice Transformer comes from the colorlines.com website, and it's just a reminder of all the different ways that you can actually take action in this work. The sort of orangish colored one was the Thanksgiving piece that I alluded to a little bit earlier, and might be of interest. Some light reading, but very important topics.
So we invite everybody who wants to come to SURJ. We have fun, we build community, and we take action. So thanks so much to FOR.